Well, greetings. Here we go for episode 10, which may be my last one for a little while, because I'm beginning to run out of things to do now that I can realistically achieve in my little basement without actually putting things together for good. I have to be able to dismantle, obviously, to get them out of the door here. So far, I have been working away doing my little test pieces, and this is undoubtedly the best one. The beautifully straight lines of the wood. It's obviously going a little bit yellow because of the epoxy and the varnish, and I've put 2 coats of epoxy and 2 coats of epiphanes, and it's coming up a beautiful finish. It's nice, but it is still, well, apart from the little bits of contamination, I'm still getting little bubbly bits in there, not serious. And what I'm wondering, I've got a polishing machine with some grinding paste, and so I was just leaving it for a few days to really go off, and then to try some fine grinding paste, and or maybe even a very fine 1200s wet and dry, and then use the polishing machine to bring it back up to a polish. I don't know if that's possible with varnish, but that's what this is all about. Because doing on the deck, obviously we're going to get some muck in there, and obviously some undulations and some craters and so on, and I'm going to need to be able to polish them out, because the decks I've seen are like mirrors, and that's perhaps they get them from spraying. I've got a compressor over there, so I might have to fire that up and have a go with spraying the final coat on. So the one I did with the sealant is upstairs in the sun. This one my wife wants me to turn into a tray because she really likes it, and it would make a nice tray with a bronze, so I might do that. The third one is over there with the 75mm wide slats and 9mm gap, and so I've had to order, I found an extra white piece of birch, or beech I think he said, from the timber supplier, which is in the UK, so that has to go to Transportugal up in London when they've cut it, and it is 9mm thick wide boards, so I've got to cut them into 3mm slats, which I professed that I could do on my bench saw, so I'm hoping that turns out to be good. So when that comes, and that'll probably be a couple of weeks, then I should get on and do that last piece, and I'm hoping that that will be the one that I'll do on the decks. So what am I doing? Well, here we go. This is what I've been up to. I've taken my motor stringers and taken quite a bit of time to build the frames up and put them and screw them there and exactly on the center line. I've been chocking them, raising them to get this thing all level and get the frames on there. I've put the transom on the back. The 2 stringers I put on either side, and because I wanted to cut these slots for the frame. This one I've done, and of course there's always the measurement problems, and I can't believe that how you can measure 2 things from the same places and still get completely different results. But the idea was to put the pieces of wood on either side and just do 2 completely different independent sets of measurements, and then bring the 2 pieces of wood together, and that would surely tell me if I've made a mistake. And I did, I made one. This is the result. As you can see, they're nigh on together. Those are, I mean, these are within a millimetre, so I mean that's fair enough. And that one's good. This one's good. This one is not. That measurement there, I got quite a bit wrong there, and then I was trying to cover the line over there, and of course if you put it on there where there isn't any wood, you end up getting this skew width, and then you end up getting lines all over. So I've checked the measurement, and this is the correct one, so that's what I'm going to cut. And what I'm doing is I'm just using a piece of sacrificial wood just to hold my plane. I've got my this one, the cordless, and I've set the blade to exactly half an inch, which is what, 12 and a bit millimeters. Those are the cuts I did, and this was what I got, which was pretty good, and that just slots in there nicely. And obviously I'm going to cut these slots out now, and I'm going to separate the pieces of wood. I can't fix them again, but I'm going to put the frames in, And the point is that I want to then make the wood that will secure this frame to this motor stringer, and it's a piece of hardwood here, and it comes up there, and so you've got 2 carriage bolts through there and 2 carriage bolts through there. Obviously these are separate, so they're quite long carriage bolts. There's quite a lot of metal, but I guess these are quite heavy bearing, weight bearing, the engine bearing stringer, so they've got to be in there. So I'm just mulling about the design at the moment, because this, you've got a nice big square piece here of mahogany which will bolt in there, won't come off, but then it's at right angled here, so you've got a 1-inch piece of mahogany with 2 bolt holes through there which will weaken it substantially. So I'm just mulling over that design. It'll obviously be glued, so I'm thinking about that one for the bit. In the meantime, some other news of the engine. The Volvo Penta they've come out with a new series of engines. Unfortunately it's too powerful. It's 300 horsepower is the minimum. It's a straight 6. It's 2 meters from the back end there, but it has I don't know how you've got it. It's the angled drive, a sail drive, I believe you call it, but you have a round hole, so it needs to be fitted on the flat portion, but this is pretty flat. It only starts going curved up here, so it would fit down here. The propellers face forward, and they're twin opposing screws, and the whole thing obviously turns electrically, so you don't need a rudder. Now that's kind of quite an interesting scenario. At the moment 300 horsepower is way too much, I think. I don't know what the motor weighs, but this is supposed to be the petrol tank at the back, and this is all supposed to be contained up here. So if I shift it all back there, I could perhaps put the petrol tank a bit further up to try to balance the boat out a bit, which is another thing I've not come across yet, is actually, you know, balancing the boat fore and aft, or trying to share the weight out. Obviously you've got the people up the front, which puts some weight up there. We'll come back to that one later, I think. But anyway, I'm having a look at that just to see if they do an engine with about a 200 horse max, and that would work. That would be pretty good. Anyway, I'm going to crack on with this first of all, and I'll come back in a bit. So the next step was to cut the slots in the motor stringers for the frames to slot into. I did it separately. I think I explained last time 2 separate times, and still managed to get one different. It just shows how careful you've got to be. But then by putting the 2 frames together, I could then come up and see if the 2 marks were the same, and for the most part they were. So I've cut them and marked them with the different frame numbers, and as you can see, I've put the rotor stringers onto the supports at the correct place. I've screwed them into the center line, got a center line mix, and I just put the first 2 on because that was, and the transom, because then I could screw through the transom into the back of the motor stringers to hold it all down there. And then I started filling them in the slots, and this is the first support that I've got. And this frame, despite measuring it, I don't know how many times, I got the measurements from there to there should be 718 mil, and it's 716. It's funny that I put the thing, I've hung the frame in there, and of course it does that. It doesn't sit tight up against it. And then I realised, of course, we've got this piece of wood which is off centre. So it isn't hanging directly down, is it? It's hanging slightly off to one side. So to counteract that, I had to put these braces in to put it so it's absolutely upright, so that I could get this. And it's funny, just that slight twist on there changes that dimension by, I mean, 3 or 4 millimeters. It's surprising. And even now, this is 716, so it's within 2 mil, and this is 1455, which is spot on. So what I might have to do is just chop another 2 mil off that one and wedge this in here to bring it forward, because I might as well be accurate. So this is the first bracket, shall I say. I've made it out of mahogany, and I've bolted it to the motor stringer, and then these I've not done at the moment because I thought, well, I'll do that and I come to actually mount them for good. So one bit of progress, I've been scouting around looking for an engine, and Volvo Penta do a 220 horse 4-cylinder diesel with a gearbox, all mounted, everything, alternator, water pump, closed water pump system. So it's a closed freshwater system, which sounds much better than the seawater, because then it's not going to block very easily, but also it's going to hopefully keep the rust out. 220 horsepower is crankshaft horsepower, so it's probably under 200 at the prop, which is probably over-spec'd on the horsepower, but I want to tow a skier behind this, the missus wants, and so I'm in favour of going for more power, because then you're not driving around the engine at full revs, which I think is about 3,800 on a diesel. The engine can be more relaxed, which makes it more fuel efficient, and so on. Anyway, that is a way to be priced up, and I've got the specs for it, and it's 565 kilos, and I was reckoning on about 350 for an engine, so completely out there. 560, and it's mounted well, somewhere between this frame and this frame, and then you've got a petrol diesel tank at the back end of the boat with about 30 gallons in it. So you've got a hell of a lot of weight here sitting on these motor stringers, and they look, I mean, with the plywood, they look strong enough to do it. The question is that strong enough to hold that frame to the motor stringer and resist all those? Well, there's very little help on the plans. There's only one diagram which shows you, and it's kind of slightly more rounded and all of that, but I mean, this is underneath the floorboards. This will go on the plywood, will glue to that, and the floorboards will glue to that. So just looking, I don't know, I've been looking through the pictures that I can find of Barrelbacks, and they use a slightly more substantial bit of wood, but it's not that different. Most of them seem to bolt it to this way, and then this bit here is the small bit, is down there on there. I can't really see what difference that makes. So I'm just pondering what the hell to do here, because 600 kilos, that's 300 kilos each side, plus the forces of 200 horsepower pushing the motor forward off its rails. I'm just thinking that I should beef this up a little bit in the area of the engine, and what I propose is to do something like that. Obviously these are a bit over the top, but just to wedge that and glue that, screw that down to the frame, and then that'll be bolted to the frame, and that would just give it some extra support. And I thought, if I do that for this frame, and number 3, which pretty much encapsulates the engine and the real heavy mechanics. Again, it's not specified in the plan, but then neither is the weight of an engine, and I don't know if this is I presume it's fine. I've seen big V8s go in them, so it can't be the first time, and this is substantial pieces of wood here on these motor stringers, so I think it's stressed for it, and it should take it all. I'm just putting a little extra block of wood or two in there, which is nominal weight, but maximum strength, which I think is a good idea. So I'm going to, I'm just going to think about this a little bit more, but I think I'll make these 4, the rest of these 3 up, and then I'll cut these in a suitable shape. I think probably out of Douglas fir, because it's going to fit on there nicely, and that will do. And then perhaps glue and screw them on, and I'd be a little bit happier about that, I think, with all the forces that are going to be going on here. So it takes a long time to cut all this out and to decide. I guess once the hard work's in the first one, isn't it? Once you've made that, then the next 3 or the next 7 or 8 are going to be relatively easy to do. I can make 2 of them up at a time. So that's where we are. Good price. Phooey, well, that's the end of a long day, I'm knackered. So this is what I've been doing all day long, and I've fixed in frame 1 and frame 2, and this is what I've decided to end up with, is to put these triangular supports either side, and then I've kept the original design, these mahogany brackets, because these are actually bolted in, and through they will eventually be there, but can't bolt them in because this is all going to come off, obviously. But this is now so rigid, and and it's I'm very pleased I've done that. I think it's a good idea to secure these 3 frames, the first 3 where the engine and the real weight, the meat sits of the engine. I'll obviously take these off, and these will be glued in, as will the frames, and then I'll bolt these in, and then I'll screw those also down into the frames. And it's just absolutely solid, and it's not even screwed or glued yet, just these bolts in. It's quite difficult to do. I just didn't realise that it was going to be, the measurements could be off so quickly and so easily. But you can see I had to put these pieces of plywood to get these frames absolutely upright, because you know, as you swing that, it would change up here 4 or 5 millimeters quite easily. Anyway, so now I've got 718, you can see that spot on, and that's 1456, that's 1 millimeter out, but that's kind of within tolerance. So that's got them dead upright, dead in the middle, and secured. I think that's good enough. That's good enough. So it's taken me all day, but now you've done these brackets, you cut them, you know what you need to do. It's actually a lot quicker, a lot easier to do the rest of them. So problem again is I'm running out of space in here. If I start getting all the frames on, I can't move around them. I have to duck and dive. But anyway, I need to do it. So I'll do frame 3 tomorrow, and do these triangular blocks, and then we'll see about the last 2, what we're going to do up there. But I don't think I'll bother. I think I'll just have the mahogany brackets. So that's good day's progress. Hello. Right, a quick update. Haven't been sitting on my bum doing nothing for the last few days. I've been doing these frames, and I've now got the transom, and I've got frames 1, 2 and 3 in position. I've built these wedges, as I said, on the frames 1, 2 and 3, because that's where the engine is going to sit, and it just might be a little bit unnecessary, but it just secures these frames to the motor stringers, because apart from 600 kilos of motor and gearbox, you've got 200 horsepower of 200 horsepower of thrust pushing that way. I don't know what that equates to in terms of kilos or pounds of thrust, but according to Newton's law, it's going to be also equal and opposite reaction is going to be trying to push these motor stringers off the frames that way. So these will stop any such movement, and these will bolt them all together. So I'm pretty pleased with that. It's just finished this one here, frame 3, and I mean, as I said before, these are not bolted, they're not glued, these are only just screwed to the motor stringers. But I mean, look at that, that's absolutely solid already. They're held really tight in place, and time them glued and screwed, they'll be rock solid. So I've got now frames 4, 5, 6, the stem section, which I might as well put together here and see how we go with all that. So I can certainly fix these frames so they can, the mahogany couplings to attach them, and all good. Okay, well, here we are after another day messing around here. I'm making great progress. Very pleased with what's happened. Here's what I've done. I have attached all of the frames to the 2 motor stringers. I think last time I was doing these supports, because these 3 frames are where the engine is going to be carried, so I put some greater, thicker supports here too. I mean, that really makes it solid, and I decided to carry them on but just make smaller ones for the frames up front, just because it makes it all, look at this, I mean, absolutely rigid, and it's not even glued or screwed, which is going to be good. I'm going to drill these holes through the frames, I think, when I've set this one up, and I can glue this and epoxy these all into place, bolt that in once and for all. But just to make sure, when I've got it all jigged up and it is it's straight and level, because it's not exactly, as I'm on a wonky floor here, it's as good as I can do. So I don't think there's any point, because experience is telling me that things always seem to move here, as the frames do. I measured them like twice, 3 times, put them, cut them, and even now I've had to saw those little gaps, those slots, like here. You can see this one is about a 3mm slot to move that forward, but the frames are now exactly where they should be, within the millimeter, so I'm very happy with that. And we're moving on to the last stage, which is now to fit this. And this is, I think, the Achilles heel of this design. This motor stringer, it sits in there. See that? That rests in there, and when I cut it, it will rest into that slot. I've unfortunately cut a 25mm slot, and you've got to look at the frames because in the design, the deck beam is behind the main frame, whereas all the frames here on the transom 1, 2 and 3, the deck beam is forward of the frame according to the plan. So I'm not quite sure why that is. So the measurement from the stern up to here comes up not to the front of here, it comes up to the front of that plywood, and I had to really look at this to make sure that I've got this right. But I can show you here on the plan that if you look at all of this, you see the distance between there comes from the front of the frame, which was kind of easy to measure. This one here, the front of the frame is underneath there, and you've got the overlapping plywood at the top, and so the front measurement there to 6, which is that 737 forward of there, is to that piece of plywood, which makes it a little bit more complicated but not impossible. So it's to there, so that's 18mm. So what I'm going to do is cut myself a little slot there, because I've got to take this off, and I shall glue that in there, so it will sit where it should sit, and all of this I think has got to come off. So the reason I think this is the Achilles heel of this design is that it's, what is there actually holding this frame on the front of the boat? Now bearing in mind you've got a bloody great big stem section, another frame here, so this is like a separate section on its own, and it is held in on here by that tiny piece of wood there. You can see there what I've got to trim off, so that you can get a tiny little bit of a screw in there, and I'm almost certainly going to put in a triangular wedge here to take that, to support that frame. But where's the strength in that? You kind of got a bit in the middle here that I can see is so much weaker than this lot, because we've obviously got a continuous piece of big lumber with plywood, and then just here, what have we got? Well, obviously we've got the stem section here. There's two 100 by 25 keel sections here, but you can see as we go down from the back, you can see that section there is getting deeper and deeper because the chine is less, so more of that wood will remain in there. I haven't cut that one there in the transom, but as we move forward and you're getting the V chine at the bottom of the boat, you can see that what I've done is I've put 2 pieces of wood, simulated pieces of wood in there, which I can show you because I believe they're here. Yes, here they are. There it is. So that will hold this piece of wood in, but you can see where that point there comes up to that mark I've made in the top. I mean, I would say about 40% of that piece of wood is fared off. If I just put one piece of wood there, you can see on the sides how much the fairing goes down. So that top piece of wood, there's not a lot there to hold that, and this is the main. Well, it's the one piece of wood that carries onto the front of the nose section, or the stem section there, and is bolted down into this frame and into those 3 pieces of 18mm plywood stuck together. It's bolted down through there, but here there ain't an awful lot. I don't like this very much. I'm going to have to think about this and find a way of beefing up this joint. I would think stick another piece of wood on the end here that will overlap the front, so that at least I can attach it on both sides, a bit like I've done to these frames here, to give it some strength. The plans just call for this slot here, this 18 or 25 I've cut, 18mm slot for sitting in there, and I presume a screw through the front, and then you've got the keel plate that will sit there, and obviously you've then got the longitudinals, but I don't want the strength to be there because of the longitudinals. That's just a bit of, you know, that's a 30 by 15 bit of wood. That's not a lot of strength. So, well, here we are at the end of the day. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go away and read the book on building plywood boats, read the plans again, and just see what I can come up with. And I think this will be tomorrow's job, is to do this, and then I'm going to assemble the front section on here and see what it all looks like. Hopefully we'll start with a strong spline. That will be the idea. And I've decided that I'm not going to stop here. I can actually start cutting the shear strakes and the chine and start fitting those here, and then I'll just screw them. Why don't I do that? And then I can cut the slots here, I can put the pieces of wood in and just screw them, not glue them. It's going to be a bit of a pain because I've got to take them all out, but at least it means that work won't stop and the episodes won't stop. So I'm going to go away and think about this. I'll come back here tomorrow, and I think once I've got this on, get the nose section assembled and get it all sorted out and jigged and at the right height, and then I'll get episode 10 away, I think, and then we can start on a clean sheet with doing some of the longitudinals and the keel plates. So that's the plan. Hi, well, this is I think I've got to go to work to London for a couple of weeks, so this is the last opportunity just to finish up with what I'm doing here, but getting a lot further on. This frame 6, I think it is, what I've done is just to extend the motor stringer out with a piece of mahogany here and screwed it down into the mahogany with a big long screw, and then I'll bolt that to the frame here, and that's making it a lot more solid. Done the same here again on this side, and what I'm going to do today is to create another wedge here to support it from this side. That's obviously got to be bolted through to the frame there. And then, as I said, the top bit here, the keel plank, is going to be mahogany, which is bolted through to the stem section here, which will give it the additional strength. Still not brilliant, that. I mean, if that really wanted to break, I don't suppose that would hold. The wood would probably snap, but it's certainly better than nothing, and as per the design plans. So I'm reasonably happy with that for the moment. Somebody was asking how the experimentation for the decking has gone, and I've got my 2 pieces of timber here in the sunshine, soaking up the sun. This is the 3M 5200, the marine adhesive sealant, and it's going yellow already, but that's not the worst. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it's bubbling up inside there. It's also just spilling out slightly into the wood. This is epoxy on top of this, the UV epoxy, and 2 coats of epipane on top. There's a bit of a pothole in that one there, but it's bubbling up on all of them. So that's really not brilliant. I don't think that's going to work, I've decided. However, this is the strips of just the Douglas fir that I've got here. So I've got the whitewood coming. It's going to be delivered on Monday, and that's a much better. It's a beautiful clean line in there. Just one fault there where that, I don't know whether the saw kicked that out, but it didn't quite fill with the epoxy, and there's a bit of a ridge there. But again, it's epoxied, 2 coats of epiphanes, and what I did is I sanded it down with 1200 wet and dry to just take the surface off, this surface sheen, and then I used my polishing motor with the Faraclar, the polishing compound that you use on cars. I used a very fine grade, and then the finishing paste, which brought it back up to a lovely shine, and by doing that, it's taken out all of the flecks of dust and the bits and bobs, and it's a perfect surface now. It's perfectly flat on that bit there, just that little deviation there, which I shall obviously have to try to avoid when I come to do this again, but that's looking the way to go with strips of wood. It looks really neat, and with white wood in there, that's going to be brilliant. So so that's all up to date. I'm going to get the episode 10 off, and I should be back in a couple of weeks hopefully, and I can crack on doing the whitewood strips on my test piece down there, and then get the nose section on. I might get that done today, and get that all finished, so that then I can start with the next one, putting the chines on the longitudinals, start cutting some of the frames. So hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, like it, comments if you do, please. They've all been useful, and I'll catch you the next time. Cheers.